Hello. We have Jared Fisher from the San Mateo Conservation District. Sorry, I always say that. Jared manages programs and projects at SMRCD addressing water resources, sedimentation, erosion, water stewardship, and habitat restoration, coastside. He earned a bachelor's degree in geography, specializing in GIS and remote sensing, and a master's degree in geographic information science from San Francisco State University. Take it away, Jared.
Thanks, Dennis. I'm going to go ahead and try and share my screen here. Let's see, I think this is the right one. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
All right, so go ahead and jump in. So thanks for being here today. Like Dennis said, my name is Jared Fisher. I work for the San Mateo Resource Conservation District. I'll be abbreviating that a bit throughout this presentation, and I'll just say RCD. So heads up on that moving forward. I manage our Water for Farms, Fish, and People program at the RCD, and I'm a senior program manager. Before I jump in, just a little bit about the RCD. The RCD in San Mateo County was created in the 1930s as a unique form of local government that functions a lot like a nonprofit. We have no regulatory authority, so we provide free, again, non-regulatory, confidential technical assistance to local residents and landowners. The RCD was literally created to help people with the evolving and emerging issues around climate change and natural resource management. So as part of that, the RCD, I'm going to change slides here. Make sure this is working. Here we go. The RCD has 5 program areas, and those are water, climate, agriculture, fire, and wildlife. And the title of my presentation, like Dennis said, is helping people help the land. So when we're thinking about these program areas, and particularly thinking about water resources and water, these different program areas don't stand alone. There's a lot of overlap or interplay between these different program areas, particularly when we're talking about water. There's really, they don't operate in a vacuum, right? So a project that might be good for, to mitigate climate change, let's say, might also be one that benefits endangered species or reduces the risk of wildfire or enhances local stream flow. So there's a lot of overlap and interplay, like I said, between these different program areas. Today, I'm going to be focusing on water resources and drought. And talking a little bit about how the RCD helps people help the land and also helps protect our local wildlife. And so when we're thinking about water, we're thinking about water resources and water management. When we approach water management, we're really looking at it from a holistic picture, not the individual landowner or where they live, the parcel. We're looking at trying to manage water resources across property boundaries and look at it from a holistic standpoint, and how do we manage these water resources so that there's enough to go around. And it's a really interesting picture, particularly where I work most on the south coast of San Mateo County. It's a lot different than the water delivery or how water is moved in Silicon Valley or in San Mateo, the city of San Mateo. There are no municipalities or water utilities. There's no irrigation district or snowpack or large reservoir or state water project. It's really just small rural communities that rely entirely on hyperlocal limited water resources, meaning the local creeks. So farms, fish, and people are all depending upon these limited local water resources. And what does that mean? People are actually taking water via a pump and a hose directly from the creek to use for their drinking water, to irrigate their agricultural fields, to supply water for whatever their needs may be. And the local wildlife is also depending on that same water resource. So as you can imagine, particularly during times of drought, like the drought that we just went through, not this last year, obviously, but the few years before that, folks were literally having to truck in water to drink, to bathe, to cook. Farmers had to fallow entire farm fields. People who do cattle operations, who are in the uplands, in the rangelands, had to basically forego having cattle because there wasn't enough water for the cattle operation. There were also instances where entire creeks dried up, and some of our threatened and endangered species like steelhead and coho were bordering on the brink of extinction. Moving on to the next slide here, I think this was a really telling image. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but here on the right, this is San Gregorio Creek, which is one of the larger creeks on the south coast of San Mateo County. And you can see the creek bed, but there's obviously something missing here, and that's water. So as droughts happen and creeks start to dry up, they can become disconnected or even dry up completely. So as you can imagine, if you have people and wildlife who are depending on the water in the creek, for their livelihood or just for drinking water, it becomes a huge challenge to make sure there's enough water to go around. How do we get more water back in the creek so when we have drought, there's actually water available? On the left hand, you'll see a photo. This is actually an agricultural pond that was completely dry during the 2018-19 season. And it becomes a huge challenge when there's not enough water to go around. So how do we tackle those issues? How do we help people maintain their livelihood, help people help the land, and also leave enough water in stream for fish? So that's really the Water for Farms, Fish, and People program that I manage. That's the world that we work in. We try and find win-win solutions that are helping people with their water management, their water resources, and also water security. And also, how do we help our local wildlife and blend those two things together to find a win-win situation? I always really like to show this image because I think it's really telling. And there's a lot happening here. Before I jump into that, actually, I also want to say that the Water for Farms, Fish, and People program, one of the things that we're really doing to help manage water resources in partnership with our local USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service is helping farmers to work to conserve and strategically manage and store water, like I was talking about before, and I'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second. We do things like helping folks fix leaks and broken pipes and drinking water supply systems, improving water pumping and delivery and storage facilities. If we can improve pumping efficiency or maybe switch pumps from electric or from diesel to electric, we're also helping reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I talked about at the beginning, coordinating water users to balance demands on limited local water resources. And then, of course, restoring water to creeks for threatened and endangered species. So all of that kind of plays into this image that we're looking at here. Where we're at is standing on top of a bluff, looking down on the town of Pescadero. And you can see in the foreground, there's agriculture, there's a row crop operation here. If you can see my cursor, this area right here is actually the riparian zone or where the vegetation has established around Pescadero Creek. So the creek kind of winds its way through the town of Pescadero. There's rangelands, uplands, there's forested areas, and all of this stuff kind of combines and interplays into one picture of how the stream and the town and the people who live here function together, right? So we've got water demand for agriculture. There's flooding that happens in the town of Pescadero. So sometimes there's not enough water and sometimes there's way too much water. How do we balance the need for water during the summer with the fact that there can be flooding during the winter? There's fish in the local creeks like I've talked about. So how do we improve habitat and balance all of these competing demands? There's a lot that goes into trying to figure out how to do that. And that's why the RCD and the different program areas we have really like to focus on the whole picture instead of just one aspect. There is a way to make all of these things work together so that we get the most benefit in helping people help the land, help their the local places that they live. And a lot of the people who live here also have a lot of interest. A lot of them are multi-generational farmers or have lived here for a long time. So they're really tied to this area and tied to this place, and really want to, not only keep their operation going and keep their livelihood alive, but also make sure that the area that they grew up in is beautiful and natural and sustainable. So one of the things that we work on kind of upfront with the Water for Farms, Fish, and People program is looking at water efficiency. How is water used and how efficient is it? This image you can see here on the left is somebody out there doing an irrigation system assessment. So what that looks like is we'll literally go out and measure how efficient is a sprinkler head spreading water over the ground. Is there a way to upgrade that sprinkler head so it's more efficient? Some of the things that we look at is like on the coast, it can be very windy. Are there sprinkler heads that can combat that spread water more efficiently in a windy environment? We look at, pipelines. Are there pipelines that are broken? Are there leaky gaskets? Is there an opportunity to upgrade pumps? What kind of crops are they growing? We have local data stations that are collecting information on evaporation, and soil health and all that kind of stuff, so we can look at, given a type of crop that's being grown, how much water should actually be applied to that crop so that we can maximize water use and efficiency on a particular type of vegetation that's being grown or a crop that's being grown. So using that information, though, we can come up with a picture or a snapshot. How much water might an agricultural operation or even a domestic water system use, and is there an opportunity to create resilience or create water storage, water security for that particular that operation? So that's what you're seeing here on the right. So once we know they're growing these kind of crops, we've looked at the efficiency. If we can increase the efficiency, here's how much water they might need for a few months. Let's say August, September, October, the driest months of the year. Can we build enough water storage so that we can store that much water use for those 3 months? They'll have the water security that they need. We'll fill the pond during the winter. They'll use that water during those really, really dry months and not take water from the creek, creating that win-win scenario where they've got the water security in the form of a pond with water, it's filled with water that's taken during the winter, and they're not having to take from the creek during those really dry months of the year, leaving more water in stream for wildlife and also for other water users downstream. Similarly, for domestic water users, is there a way for us to fix leaky sinks or toilets? Are there efficiency upgrades with showers? Can we replace their distribution system? A lot of the domestic water systems that are in the South Coast are from the 1930s and 40s, and as you can imagine, they're in a state of decay. So upgrading those to kind of state-of-the-art, more modern systems helps a lot with efficiency. And particularly with our local parks, we work with them quite a bit on replacing supply lines and all that kind of stuff. Their highest usership is always in the summer when there's the most water demand and the least amount of water. So being able to help them upgrade those systems is going to help keep more water in stream. There we go. Like I said, we work with a diverse group of folks. There's goat dairies. We work with traditional agricultural operations. We work with small organic farmers. We kind of work across the spectrum, domestic water users, to really help people on an individual basis figure out what their demands are, what are the resources that we can bring to the table or technical assistance we can provide to help them be the most efficient, to help them manage their resources, not just on their own property, but also, work collaboratively with their neighbors and across a watershed wide scale so that there's enough to go around. And I always like to show this image as well. I think one of the components that people don't talk about a lot about, water and keeping water in the landscape is soil health. soil is really in the vegetation that grows there is really like a sponge. If we're able to improve soil health and capture and keep more water in the ground, it's going to help later in the season when stream flows are going down. If there's more water stored in the soil, it's going to help keep stream flows elevated throughout the rest of the season. And some of the impacts of drought are also things like grasses dying off on ranches, not enough food for cattle. So if the soil is keeping more water, it's also helping the ranching operations and agricultural operations keep their livelihood alive. So improving soil health is really, really important kind of to the greater vision of helping restore more water into the local creeks, and also help combat climate change. Healthy soil is going to grow more vegetation. It also helps us with local native vegetation that's going to be going to draw carbon down and store that carbon in the soil. This is a slide of just some interesting tidbits. The RCD, we just did a 15-year impact report. So this is kind of all the things we've been doing over the last 15 years. And one really interesting piece I always like to share about the program that I work in, we've been able to conserve 228 acre-feet of water annually, so every year. And that equates to about 74 million gallons of water conserved every single year through the updates and efficiencies and that sort of thing that I talked about earlier. We've also been able to create 146 acre-feet of water storage. So that's building ponds where we're taking water during the winter and storing it, and then allowing them to leave that water in the creek later. So 146 acre-feet equates to about 47 million gallons of water storage. We've also responded to more than 1,000 requests for technical assistance in that time, helped 21 property owners and businesses comply with new water quality regulations. So there's that kind of water quality piece. And I didn't actually mention on the slide earlier where we were kind of standing on that bluff looking at the town of Pescadero, there's also, as we're thinking about water quality issues that arise, like, sedimentation and that sort of thing. So we're also trying to not just look at water as far as how much is available, but also the quality of water. We've also been able to restore over 1,500 acres of wetland, forest, creek, riparian, grassland habitat. Removed 8 dams. One actually happened this year. It's wrapping up, I think, today. Restoring access to 118 miles of creeks for fish migration and spawning. And I think the forest health program is also really interesting. It's only come about in the last couple of years, but they've already been able to improve the health of 46 acres of forest. And there's thousands of more underway right now. And then our ag program has been working with a number of urban and rural farms, over 100, and ranches and 29 equestrian operations. So we've been very busy and there's a lot going on. And I think with that, I will go ahead and stop sharing and hand it back over to Dennis.
Hey, and there I am. Well, thank you, Jared, so much, and really appreciate the focus on Pescadero. I know they've had significant water quality issues, especially kind of like the high school, for instance. Last I heard, still doesn't really have potable water. They
That's correct.
truck in water, and I'm hoping actually like to talk to you afterwards about some possible things there, because that's part of Waterpalooza too, in terms of making the connections on particular different collaborations and projects. So it's great to see an overview of what your neck of the woods is like, and the shoreline. I mean, it's in a way, it's a smaller version we had a briefing on the Monterey Peninsula, which again is away from the state and federal water projects and things, and obviously they have a lot of different issues. They have the highest water rates in the country, actually, but it's a significantly bigger area and bigger population, and so luckily at this point don't have too much of the water quality issues, although there's obviously there's a lot of the same kind of mix of ag and urban uses as well. Well, thanks once again, and certainly look forward to hearing more kind of updates from coast side updates.
Absolutely, yeah. Happy anytime to provide updates or give presentations. And I think there's a lot happening, and we're really excited about all the good work that's going on and the partnerships that we've been making with many organizations like your own. I think there's a lot of change happening, and there's a lot of really good work being done. And we're trying to, keep moving things forward. I think, everybody working together and pulling in the same direction is the only way to keep up with what's happening, with climate change, and make sure that we're all able to have a sustainable ecosystem moving forward.
Yeah, it's certainly a changing climate. We have to change with it. And I know, we're still learning about like the impact of wildfires on water systems and stuff, and that was thrown in stark relief a few years ago, as well. So thanks once more.
Absolutely, happy to be here.